President Biden is once again a wartime president. He reportedly wants to head to Israel at some point, hoping he can recreate the polling boost from his numbers when he visited Kyiv. Anything would help right now. 67% of Americans feel the country is on the wrong track. 54% of Americans disapprove of President Biden. Jimmy Carter famously appeased the Soviets, much like Mr. Biden appeases Iran. After getting embarrassed by the Soviets time and time again, Carter reversed course. But it was too late. America saw him as weak, as did the world. He lost to Ronald Reagan in a landslide. Krystal Ball is here, host of Breaking Points on YouTube, former MSNBC host. It's good to see you. Are we seeing a shift in President Biden, you think?
Shift in what way?
Change the policy towards Iran.
I don't know that he's changing policy towards Iran. I think that he made a huge mistake at the beginning of this administration, not getting back into the Iranian nuclear deal.
Right.
I think that the trip to Israel is a massive risk, given that our, huge ally that he has said unequivocally that he stands behind and has a right to defend themselves, and they're trying to rush aid to, et cetera, is in the midst of committing what the UN describes as war crimes, including a medieval siege. I think that the war that you and Ambassador Bolton seem very anxious to get us into in Iran would be obviously a political catastrophe for the president.
I don't hear anybody interested in a war.
John Bolton seems very interested in war with Iran, and not to mention has always been interested in war with Iran,
so
leading us directly into World War III. So okay. I don't know about his policy on Iran, but I see the view of the Middle East very different from where I sit.
Okay, so what do you make of what Jake Sullivan, the president's advisor, said, what is it now, 18 days ago or so, about how they viewed the Middle East? Take a listen.
The war in Yemen is in its 19th month of truce. For now, the Iranian attacks against U.S. forces have stopped. Our presence in Iraq is stable. I emphasize for now because all of that can change. And the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Well, I'll tell you what mistake he made, which is also the same mistake that Biden made, which is also the same mistake that Trump made, was to try to pretend like the Palestinian quote-unquote issue didn't exist, that you didn't have millions of people in Gaza seething under a multi-year blockade, that you didn't have illegal settlements and occupation in the West Bank, that you did not have to deal with these millions of people who are under an illegal apartheid system. And so you had the Trump administration that moved forward with the Abraham Accords, again, ignoring that situation. You had the Biden administration moving ahead with attempted normalization of Saudi and Israeli relations, all pretending that this problem with the Palestinians did not exist. I think the fact that the world forgot that this was unfolding is a key part of the problem here.
My question would be, whose fault is that problem, though? Because you seem to want to blame it on Israel, and you want to seem to take away Israel's right to self-defense.
No, I don't. I don't want to take away their right to self-defense. What I do want to take away is their right to have an apartheid state,
which they don't. Which they don't. Come on, Krystal. Come on, Krystal.
Leland,
no.
right now. Hold on. Let me just say.
Go ahead.
Let me just say. What Hamas did, terrorists. Massacre.
Oh, thank you. That's
horrendous.
Huge of you to be able to point out.
Innocent civilians should not be targeted, whether they are innocent Israeli civilians or innocent Palestinian civilians, which you seem to have no issue with.
No, I have a huge issue with it. The fact of the matter is I have lived there for 4 years. I've reported on it. I realize there's an enormous difference in moral clarity between Hamas that targets civilians, which you agree they do, and the Israelis that go out of their way not to target civilians. There is an enormous difference between the two.
How much of a comfort is it to the parents of the 1,000+ children in Gaza right now who are dead, that Israel theoretically maybe has less barbaric tactics?
So let me just
They've already killed more in Gaza than in the horrific Hamas attacks.
So whose
one atrocity does not
okay, you've said that 3 times
another atrocity.
Whose responsibility is the fact that those civilians are still there? Is it the responsibility of the Israelis? Or is it the responsibility of Hamas that's setting up checkpoints to keep civilians as human shields? Or is it the responsibility of the Egyptians that won't let them through Rafah? Or is it the responsibility of the rest of the Arab world that will not take a single Palestinian refugee to allow them to escape a murderous regime in Hamas?
There is plenty of blame to go around. What I will tell you, though, is are you aware that Netanyahu, as a policy to try to short-circuit any efforts at peace and the establishment of a Palestinian state, intentionally propped up Hamas because he saw them as a useful foil. These are not my words. These are his words. That is why the Israeli people overwhelmingly want him to be out of a job because of that failure, because of the intelligence failure, because of the military failure. And now we're going to stand by.
Now we're on to Israeli politics.
We're going to stand by and say it's fine for them to drop white phosphorus on civilians.
Which they haven't dropped anyway.
Yes, they have, according to Human Rights Watch.
I gotta run. Thank you.
Thanks, Leland.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.